All right. Welcome to our interviewing in a virtual space workshop here today. This is part of our Prep Talks workshop series. I am Tim Goetz, the Senior Career Development Specialist here at Franklin. And with me is
Cyndi Freeman, the Director of Career Development at Franklin. Thank you, Tim.
All right. So to get started here,
I wanted to say a little bit that when we think about interviewing and we think about interviewing in a virtual environment, there are like, I've never done this before. This is crazy. How are they thinking of these interviews? Well, Tim and I've done some research. And what we've really found is that there's really nothing new in an interview.
and I think it's going to be the same thing we had last night where I forgot to share my audio again.
That's all right. We'll hold for a minute. It's a video that's worth it. It's not very long, but
Okay.
I think it does bring the points home.
So, you want your job?
What are you do?
Me and they have made hunter. Me all together.
You hunt together.
Did they many So, they will say us having. Take your more time. Hunter? Maybe getting.
Why you leave that job?
That's more time. Me make the jump bigger.
How long you with that job?
10 months?
10 months? Me hear you leave after 2 months. Me hear you leave and go travel around playing with friends. Me too. Me don't try to chase for them.
Me just want to play. Me gotta just see them. Yeah.
Lovely. Little. Little.
It's going to be that day, people.
So interviews are all basically still the same. It's you trying to present your qualifications for a role to people who are looking to fill a position. One of the things you want to always keep in mind during an interview that they want one thing, they want somebody to ease the pain that they're experiencing. And that's what you need to be prepared for. And I wanted to point out that you're going to hear a million no's before you hear that yes. Resumes that you submit and don't hear anything back, ones that get an instant rejection, one that get a rejection months later, ones that get an interview, but then not the job, but you'll finally hear a yes, and you only need to hear one. And just from my own personal background, when I first applied to go work at Penn State, I'd started working there in November, and the following May, I received a rejection letter from Penn State.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the types of interviews. We're going to focus mainly on two today. Now, saying that, face-to-face and panel interviews will tie into this a lot, but really we're going to focus on the phone and the video interview. And the video can be live or recorded. It can be with one or multiple people. So with that, we're going to get into the phone interview. So why do companies choose phone interviews? It's an easy way to screen candidates. So that's right off the bat. They can make a phone call. It takes, a couple minutes to determine whether or not you are the right candidate for their position. So it doesn't cost anybody any additional money or resources. And they know whether or not you are going to be right for the position within a couple of minutes. So phone is a really easy way to get the interview done. And then with that, as you're going through some of these screening questions and things of that nature, the interviewer can hear the hesitations and reactions in your voice. They can hear places where you have pause or might have some story that may not go along with what they're looking for. Those types of things really come out because they're concentrating on what you're saying, as opposed to, a face-to-face where you could potentially get away with some of those different things. In delicate times, the phone interview allows for some flexibility. Like I said, it takes a couple minutes to make a phone call, and really doesn't take away from other resources. And it doesn't waste anyone's time because of the short time frame, and no need for additional resources.
And the only thing I'd like to interject is that realize that when they make that phone call, you don't have to answer on the spot. If you're walking down the street, walking your dog, and you get the phone call and somebody wants to talk to you right then, you can ask them to call you back in 5 minutes so you can get home and settle down. If you're someplace that's busy and congested, you can step into a private room. It gives you a minute or two to think and focus, because you want to be able to answer the questions without distraction.
So why video? Technology is easier and better quality now. We can sit down and record a video on our phones, or on our computers in a matter of minutes, and the quality is good. And then it allows companies to see your reactions to questions. And this goes for a live face-to-face where you have somebody else in the room with you, or an interview where they're just flashing questions onto a screen and you have to give your answers to those questions. So it would be a recorded interview at that point. And it allows employers to see how you react to those difficult questions. And again, it allows for flexibility in delicate times. Doesn't waste anyone's time. No need for additional resources. But it does allow for that face-to-face interaction, even if it is, through video. We can still see each other, and we can, ask questions or see reactions from there.
Since 2020, Tim and I have had students that have gone all the way through an interview process, and it's all been virtual. And even their onboarding was done virtually. And so until they started to work for the company, they haven't even been to their office yet.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about some of the interviewing basics, what every interview is about. And I'll let Cyndi elaborate a little more on these, but dig right into the basics here.
Yeah. In any role, from being a cashier in a store to being the president of an organization, every employer is looking for the same things. In every employee, they want to see that that person has leadership. What are you going to bring to us? How are you going to help us from our current state? They want to know that you're an excellent collaborator across your unit, across other divisions, to outside clients, whatever it might be. They want to understand that you have strong communication skills and you can be effective in the situations that you go into. And they always want to know if you're a creative problem solver. So when you think about the questions that they ask you throughout the interview, in the back of your mind, plant these thoughts. Are they looking for leadership? Are they looking for collaboration? Is this about creative problem solving? You want to weave these traits into the stories that you tell. The other thing is, I want you to know that each and every interview, you have to interview from strength, not from weakness. This comes from a lot of things. It's the stance you take with yourself. And Tim and I tease about this a little bit. I tell you have to strike a superhero pose. So just before the interview, you want to get those strengths up. You want to start feeling it. Stand up, put your feet a shoulder width apart, put your hands on your hips, and become whatever superhero is your favorite. From Black Panther to Wanda to Wonder Woman to Batman to Superman, you have strength in the interview. Whoops. You are interviewing them the same as they're interviewing you. You want to think about this company. If you're interviewing for somebody and they show up 5 minutes late, what's that tell you about the process? What might be going on in the company? How are they asking questions? If there's multiple people in the interview, how do they engage with each other? You're trying to figure out if this is a place you want to work, as well as where they want you to work. We know that they're going to ask behavioral questions. That's the number one question that they're used in an interview. An employer wants to know how you're going to behave in the future. The only way they can ascertain that is based on situations in the past. How did you perform in the past? How did you solve that problem? And how might you adapt that to their environment? And always, always, always have a question or two to ask at the end. You want to wrap up the interview with something where you're learning more information about them. So one of my favorite questions is to ask, if I get this role 6 months from today, we're sitting down and talking about my performance. It's been excellent. What are you praising? That tells you what the job's really about. If you're meeting with multiple people, you're going to get multiple answers, and that's going to really allow you to develop a picture of the organization.
Right. And with any interview, with any job search, with anything really in life, prior preparation prevents poor performance. So we want to make sure that you are prepped and ready to go into these interviews and to come out with a job offer. So with that, we're going to get into some of the how-tos on how to interview. So how to practice. So practicing for an interview, practicing for anything really is essential. So for an interview, you're going to practice. You can hop into a Zoom room. Generally, they're free to anybody. They give you about a 45-minute limit. But if you hop in with a friend or family member, you can go back and forth and have them ask you those difficult questions, those behavioral questions that you need to prepare for. Along with practicing is also making sure that your computer audio and video is up to par, so that when you get into these interviews, you're not blindsided by not having the correct audio or the correct video at the time. You want to make sure that you practice your 1-minute me or your introduction. And so a 1-minute me or an elevator pitch is a situation where you might have 45 seconds to a minute to introduce yourself to somebody, the interviewer, for example. What would you tell them in that 1 minute that would make them say, I really need to talk to this person again? That's a 1-minute me. It can include anything from, well, basic information, where you graduated from, or where you're going to school, what your expertise is in, and what you plan to do in the future. 1-minute me's are, like I said, 45 seconds to a minute, and contain a lot of information that can answer some of the questions that an interviewer might have.
And what you want to think of is, why this job, why you, why now? You're tying up your knowledge, skills, and abilities to this role. And as Tim said, you can answer up to three to five questions that they're going to ask you, but it sets the tone for your interview.
And always be prepared for, so practice those behavioral questions. We like the STAR story. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So you're going to go through and lay out some stories where you had a difficult situation or some sort of situation at work. You're going to talk about the tasks that you had, the actions you took, and the results you received or viewed from those actions. And those situations or those behavioral questions become a lot easier to answer when you go through the STAR method. So we're going to attach to this video, we're going to attach our template for the STAR story method so that you can practice those. The next thing you're going to do is learn to respond to weakness questions. And a weakness really isn't a weakness if you think about it, and if you do the right things. So if you know that you might be weak in an area, say that you're, for example, Cyndi has a great one. She was weak in pivot tables. And why don't you tell them what you did to get better at that, Cyndi?
So the weakness question, if they ask you, what's your greatest weakness? It's a terrible question to ask. It really doesn't elicit anything you really need to know about the employee. What they're really looking for is, do you know things in yourself that are weak, and can you correct them, is what they're asking about. So one of mine is for many years, I worked in organizations where somebody else made the pivot tables for me. No matter how much data for how many years, whatever I had, there was somebody else that put it together for me. I recognized in myself that this was a weakness. So in an interview, somebody'd ask me about a weakness, and you always want to laugh and say something off the cuff. Never say I don't have any. Never say that, hey, it's chocolate, but you want to think about what you're saying. So in mine, I said, well, I have to be really honest with you. For many years, I worked where I didn't need to do the actual hands-on work with Excel to create pivot tables. I realized that was a weakness in myself. So I set out, I took a course, and I can make my own pivot tables. Would you like to see one?
Right. And finally, we have research. So you want to make sure that you're researching companies. Now, our favorite website to research on is LinkedIn. LinkedIn gives you a lot of information packed into one source. So it can give you information about the company. It gives you information about who's working there, right down to the point of alumni from your college or university that are working at that particular organization. So LinkedIn is one of the great research websites we use. We also use Glassdoor, and just a simple Google search will help. But any information that you can find about the company, the culture, who works there, will help you determine whether or not that position is really something that you want to get into. All right, so how to prep. Of course, you're going to test your audio and camera. No headphones. Of course, I'm wearing headphones now, but mine is more for keeping the distractions down. But you want to make sure that when you're in an interview, you're in a quiet space where you can use the computer's audio and video hands-free, or have your ears free as well. But you want to test that to make sure it's working properly beforehand. Make sure that the laptop is at face height and that you're not looking directly into the camera like that, or that you're not too far away from the camera. You're not off to one side or the other. Make sure that the camera is right in the middle so that you can see a good portion or all of your face so they can get those reactions right. And with that, I think we have it, yep, right down there. I'm going to jump onto the lighting next because with the camera at the right height, you want to make sure that you have the right light as well. And that means that you want to have light coming from behind the camera. You don't want it from behind the person because that will make your face darker. You want it coming from behind the camera or behind the laptop. So that way it's shining onto your face and can illuminate your face. You of course want to dress professionally. Press your shirt, wear a tie, dress one level up. So if you see that people in the organization, if it's a factory work, that they're dressing in shirts and t-shirts, or shorts and t-shirts, you want to make sure that you're dressing in a nice pair of pants and a tie. This will help with confidence as well going into the interview. Make sure you put your cell phone away, preferably off or out of the room. This avoids distractions from the cell phone. So make sure it's off or out of the room as best as possible, because we don't want to sit here in the middle of an interview and, we forget that we're on camera and we're picking up our phones and we're looking at our emails and checking our text messages and things like that. Something we don't want to do. So make sure it's out of the way.
I would also, Tim and I both wear Apple Watches. And I would say in these situations, you want to take your Apple Watch off as well.
Yep. Take your smartwatch off, make sure it's off your wrist. And close all other computer applications. You don't want to make sure that you get, if you get an email in the middle of your interview, that your computer's dinging all throughout your interview to act as a distraction for you. All right. More how to preps.
I'll do this one, Tim. One of the things is when Tim and I work with students to develop a job search, one of the things we talk about is staying organized in that job search. And that means you're tailoring a resume, you're tailoring a cover letter for every job you apply for. It only makes sense then to put in a file, the resume, the cover letter, and the position description. That way, when you have an interview, you can pull it up and review the high points and really understand how you spoke to that position in a way that made them want to talk to you. The other thing is that we're talking to you about star stories and your 1 minute me. And sometimes you just get kind of flustered about what's going on. There are ways to beat that. One of the things is use Post-it notes on the wall behind. One of the things I like is a big piece of newsprint hung behind the computer so I can look at it. It's back there, but it looks like I'm just looking at the camera, and I could have my 3 to 5 star stories with just a couple words that are my hints. I could have, 2 or 3 notes about my 1 minute me that applies to this role that I want to make sure that I remember. And if there's anything else I want to throw in. One of the things might be, for example, if you've done your research about the company, you might find out they're earning a new venture, and you could comment on that at some point during your interview. Make sure you have alone time for the interview. We all understand the world in which we work. I mean, if we spun the camera around in Tim's, you would see 3 other people with cameras in his house. And so there can be lots of distractions. There can be pets, all sorts of things. So try to make sure you have alone time. Tim and I can tell you that we've actually had a student that did their interviews in their car. That's where they could get away from it all. And they were successful in doing that. They did use the backdrop. So they didn't necessarily know they were in the car. You also want to have pen and paper ready to take notes. One of the other things that you want to do is you want to diagram. So let's say, for example, I end up in a virtual interview and there are 3 people interviewing me. I want to, on the paper in front of me, when they introduce themselves, I want to put which boxes where, and I would put Tom, Tim, Sarah, whoever might be in. Then when I answer a question, I can say, well, Tim, that's a great question. Because everybody's not going to have their name on the screen for you to see, but it helps you to stay organized. If there's something that you want to go back to, something you want to touch on a later question, take a note of that. The other thing this can be really, really helpful for is helping you craft those thank you notes after. Have some water at the ready. If it's a bottle of water, Tim always likes to comment on the people that have the real crinkly plastic ones, and that noise can be really distracting. So you don't want to do that. You can have water in a glass. I'm not a big fan of the huge giant suppy cups. I think it can distract from what's going on, but you need some water in case your throat gets dry. You want to do everything you can to get contact information from the interviewers so you can follow up with them. Some companies, the person's freely going to give you an email address. Sometimes they won't. That in that case, what you're going to do is that you'll communicate your thanks post interview with the person who arranged the interviews, and he or she can share it with others. Technology is a beautiful thing, and it's wonderful if everything works, but sometimes it doesn't. Tim, yesterday morning, he sent a photo to my phone, of his computer, deciding to do all its downloads for the whole year that morning. And he made a joke, well, I'll see you at 5 o'clock. We can lose internet. Something can happen with our conductivity. Something can fade in or fade out. You need to have the backups to dial in if that occurs. This shows a high level preparedness and how important you think this interview is. If you get a Zoom invitation or a team invitation, it'll have a phone number listed there where you can dial in. If you don't have that information, make sure that you speak to the person who set up the interview to make sure that you have the dial-up information just in case.
All right. So a little bit more on how to prep. You want to make sure you research the company. As we mentioned earlier, we like LinkedIn, simple Google search, and Glassdoor. Those three will work out pretty well for you.
Jim, you have a great story about helping a student with this process that led to great success.
Yeah, we've got a couple of them actually. So the first one, the student came to us and she was interviewing at a textile company in Groveport, Ohio here, which is it's a suburb of Columbus. And she didn't know any information about the employer. So we went out to LinkedIn, did a simple search. We found a few things about the company that were interesting. The first was that the hiring manager for the position was actually a Franklin University alumni. So there was an instant connection right there. The next thing we found out was that that particular textile company made textiles for IKEA. So here's this little company in Groveport, Ohio, making textiles for this worldwide organization in IKEA, which was really interesting to find out. The next success story we had was I had a young lady contact me. She had an interview for a position she really wanted. And it actually ended up being a 3 interview process for her. Well, we were able to find on LinkedIn all the company information and all the information about the interviewers that she was going to have. And we were able to find things on the culture of the organization, things about the interviewers themselves and what they carried into the organization. And we were able to use those to her advantage in those interviews. So researching the company and the interviewers is a great way to not only become comfortable with who you're going to be interviewing with in the company, but it's a great way to find out little tidbits about those people that you can interject in those interviews to bring up stories and commonalities that you might have with them. It's also a great way to find out who went to school at the same place you're going. And it can ease some of those tensions there as well. So you want to make sure, again, that you're practicing your STAR stories and that you have those down pat. Those can be listed on those sheets of paper that you're tacking around your computer, either on the wall or on the computer itself. You want to make sure you have those at the ready. You want to make sure you're looking.
Let's give an example of a STAR story.
All right. Do you have one prepared there?
I think I do. So remember again, Tim told you that it's situation, tasks, actions, and results. So if they ask you a situation, can you tell me about a time where you've had a difficulty with another employee and how you handled it? Well, right away, your brain goes to the most horrific experience you've ever had in your past. So you want to prepare for this. So my tale would be about that I worked with a colleague and we were in a team project. There were 4 of us on the project. We each had different components that we were bringing to the project. We had been meeting weekly to make sure where we were with the process, and we were in the 4th week of an 8-week process. one of the members of the team wasn't contributing the information that they should in a timely manner, and it was holding the rest of the team up. So I chose to speak to this individual outside the meeting, away from things. And my first comment was, how do you think things are going with our project? The person kind of said, well, this isn't going so well, that's going so well. Then I said, how can I help? We're all in this together. This is a group project and we want to be able to make it happen. And the person laid out what they needed to do, what they needed to get done, gave me a timeline for when it would be together. The rest of the project was successful. We turned it in on time and it was approved. So I think the biggest thing in solving that problem with another employee is making sure that communication is clear and accountability is clear without blaming.
All right, thank you, Cyndi. Some of the next things you want to do, you want to make sure that you're looking into the camera, not the screen. So you're not looking off to, if you have multiple screens, you're not looking to the right or looking to the left, but look into the camera to show that you're paying attention to what's going on there. You want to send thank you notes within 8 hours. We're finding that in these virtual environments, employers are making decisions very quickly. And the reason is they can do these interviews back to back to back, and then they can make quick decisions on these positions. So you want to make sure that you're sending that note within 8 hours. It can really make the difference between you getting the job and not getting the job. If you and another interviewer are neck and neck, and you send a thank you note, that could really put you over the top. So you want to make sure you're sending out something to thank them for their time, and also interject what your knowledge, skills, and abilities are bringing to that particular position. And remind them of something that you said in the interview that really hit home, something that really showed them that you were right for that particular position. And that is how you ace the interview. Right. So here's some things that you always want to do. As I mentioned earlier, you want to dress one level up for the interview. So again, if they're wearing shorts and t-shirts, you want to make sure you're wearing a nice pair of pants and a tie, shirt and tie. Again, it gives you confidence in the position. You want to make sure you have good eye contact. Again, looking into the camera and not at the screen and not all around. You want to make sure you're using good posture, not slouched over or leaning on something, or leaning back in your chair. You want to make sure you're upright and proper, using good posture. You want to make sure that you're answering questions seriously, through video, through phone, even face to face. They don't know your sense of humor, so they can't really tell if you're joking or being serious. You want to make sure that you're answering these questions seriously. And you want to make sure you take notes. Diagram who's who around the room, taking notes on questions they ask. So that way, if you feel like you don't answer that question well, you can practice an answer to it. And you can make sure you nail it. And the other thing you can do too is you can take those notes, and if there was a question that you really want to refine, you can make sure that you answer that again in your thank you note when you send it out. All right.
One of the things I'd like to point out is that sometimes there's pressure and there's immediacy of things being on the screen, and you think, I got to ask this right now. There's always going to be a question that gives you like a, or I don't have an answer for that. So you want to take your time to answer. And there's lots of ways to do that. One of the things would be is if they say, let's say it's a 2-part question. And when they ask the question, you jot down the first part and you can, for a minute, excuse me, can you repeat the question again? And then you can put in that second piece. Take your time to answer. They want to hear your answer. You could even pause and say, let me think about this and get back. Could I please? And they're always going to allow you. You want to address everybody that's in the room, whether it's a real room or an electronic room. It's really easy to begin to focus in on one person. For example, if you know the person is the director and the 2 aides are in the room, there's a tendency to want to focus on the director, the director, the director. Those assistants are looking for somebody to work with them and be collaborative. So they want to know that you know who they are too and what their function is. You always want to thank everyone for your time and do everything you can to get that contact information. And I know we're repeating ourselves, but there are things that are so easy to forget. And then later you're like, I can't send a note. So we want to make sure that we cover those points.
Yep. Always make sure you get that contact information. All right. So what to do the day of the interview? Of course, you want to make sure you arrive early, even online. 10 to 15 minutes is a good thing. And that way you can prep your audio, you can prep your video. And actually, Cyndi and myself, we were here 15 minutes before this workshop. We want to make sure everything's working properly. In fact, last night when we ran this workshop, Cyndi's camera wasn't working well. So we had a few different hiccups with
We
that.
had a catastrophe. I actually moved the camera from one computer screen to the other and dropped it below the desk and had to pick it back up. It was really entertaining.
It was an interesting start to our workshop last night. So you want to make sure you arrive early to avoid those kinds of things. You also want to get the lay of the land. So again, diagramming who's sitting where, or at least who's in the different screens on your interview. That way you know who to address when you're talking, answering a question they may have.
One other point about getting the lay of the land is that different organizations interview differently. So for example, there may be, you have 10 or 15 minutes conversation with an interview, then they give you some sort of a problem or task to work through and then return to the interview. So if all those things are laid out on screens differently, you want to understand that going in and be prepared.
You want to make sure you greet everybody with a smile, say hi, welcome, and thank them for the interview. Even if it's before the interview, thank them.
Right.
Okay.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is oftentimes you're going to find that the actual interview technology is being set up by someone separately from the actual interview team. That individual, whether they're the receptionist someplace you walk in, they are an administrative assistant to someone in the organization, they are the manager of first impressions. If you arrive in a timely manner, you greet them, you thank them for setting it up, they're going to convey that, oh, Tim was there on time, he seems like a good guy. You want to let that go through. So that smile matters.
Yep.
The other one, I'll take this one because I think I embarrassed him with this one. You need to psych yourself up. Even if you're in your own home, at your own computer, and you're getting ready for that interview, give yourself time to go to the bathroom, look at yourself in the mirror, make sure your hair is not sticking up crazy, and take a deep breath. Strike that superpower pose again. And then there's something else I'm going to ask you to do. Sometimes you're not going to be at home. Sometimes you're going to be in a more public place, but you got to use this time carefully. I want you to pump yourself up, and I want you to know that you believe in yourself in this position. At home, there's no issue. You can stand wherever you want, and you're going to punch your arms like this and say, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, and bring those endorphins up. You're working from that power position. You're feeling that strength. Breathe and know that you've got this. Now, in a public bathroom, just don't say it out loud.
And remember too, Cyndi and I got you on this too. We're behind you. So if you've gone through our workshops, you've gone through the prep, we believe in you and you've got this as well.
That's
So,
true.
remember, you got this. So if you need to contact us for anything, resume reviews, interview prep, interview research, anything related to your career search, you can always contact us. And here's how you would do that. Our website, there's our email address, and then there's My Career, which will help you with every step of your career path. For current students, it's the franklin.edu/my-career. And for alumni, it's franklin.edu/my-career-alumni. So feel free to check those out. Everything's on those sites is free. It's got our document libraries, and we will see you at our next workshop.